introduce our speakers this evening, Michael and Jody Krogstad, hailing from south of Houston, Texas, and on the topic of social media. And I can say they are my go-to in the realm. Michael's been in the IT technology arena for many years and probably knows far more of the other side of what we're protecting against. And so just looking forward to hearing from them, and I will turn it over to them to share.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Social media. So that's a pretty broad topic. Many of you have heard us share from the perspective of security and recognizing the need to understand, what it is, the media, understanding it in appropriate ways. So if you have questions in that realm, feel free to contact us.
That's not tonight.
And that's not tonight. So we're going to do it a little bit different.
Mike lives in the world of technology, and he's been working in it for over 30 years now. So we've seen a lot of things come and go. He's able to work now in an advisory position, doing consulting in the capacity of consulting. So he's in it. He's getting to use the experience of those 30 years. I've come from more basic background, but in it, we've experienced both the good and the bad sides of what social media has to offer. On one hand, there was a legitimate need to be connected 24/7 for years for Mike, as he did global support and having to run through stuff. And yet the distraction also that we were able to see that it had become, and it did become in our family. The kids were gifted many years ago with an innocent, grateful gift of a shuffle. They were each given a shuffle. If you remember that very early technology, it was the first technology that entered our home that was separate from Mike's work, where it wasn't because of work. And as parents, he put what was on it, on each of their little squares. But they could choose what they wanted to listen to from what he put on. It was Adventures in Odyssey and worship music. There was nothing on it that was in any way harmful or bad. The kids demonstrated no maliciousness, no deception, no hidden programs. They weren't trying to, sneak times to listen or anything like that. It was all up front. When our two oldest girls were in the mid-teen years, we had a shared phone. And again, it was for whoever was driving, whoever was babysitting, whoever was going to be away from us and needed somewhere other than home, it would carry it. Again, a grateful gift was provided, extra phones, so that they each had one. Nothing wrong at that. But what we found is that the heart of each of these pieces of technology that entered the home, it provided really a promotion of high individualism. High degree of individualism was promoted through it. And in that there was nothing wrong with any of these, and yet this is what we began to see. And through this then became the temptation for dissatisfaction and inclusion. I remember when one of our girls had to get an email address for a project that they were a part of. And I remember her coming to me and just exclaiming in frustration that first, you're convinced of your need because of your involvement. And it was a good project. It was a good program. You're convinced of your need to have it because you're involved. And then in that you have it, you have to use it. And so since you need to use it, now you need to get the addresses of other people to write to, and they have to give you their addresses. So everybody who's included was involved. Little did she know she was seeing the problem that now in the future we're addressing, and that everybody's addressing as a culture. As much as these tools were designed to provide community, many times the outcome was the opposite. That's not what has happened. Individualism has no check and balance. It has no accountability, and it really inhibits the true community that we think we're getting by joining these parts of it. So as I said, we've seen advantages, disadvantages. Yeah. So we're going to be covering a little bit more of that.
Yeah. It's a little bit of that. If Gary, you remember the have more, no, do more,
No more, do more.
no more, to do more, to have more. To know more, to do more, to have more. Yeah.
Social media
So-
falls into that.
Social media, yes, it definitely falls into that cycle. But yeah, we've seen positive and negative impacts in it. As many of you know, we have this year become empty nesters. Our closest daughter, which has all the grandchildren, thankfully, is just 5 minutes down the road. However, we've got one 3 hours down the road, 12 hours down the road, and then 2 that are over a day's drive. So with it all being spread out, one of the benefits that we've seen is we can keep in contact. We can text, we can call, we can Marco, we have FaceTime, we have Zoom. And that's been a positive effect for us in the community of our family to be able to keep in contact.
And accountable.
And accountable, yeah. On the other hand, there's the negative sides, which are like Snapchat. This has not built our community. There's no accountability. It's easy to hide. It excludes. It allows you to take a picture and have no explanation behind it and then have it disappear. As parents, we want to assume the best. Life is going just fine.
You
Accurate
think?
or not? Yeah. So we're going to kind of take you back a little bit in the early years of the Bible and talk through a little bit in Genesis 3 and think about the fact being that while Adam and Eve were in the garden, Satan came along in the form of a serpent. And he really told them, you're missing out. You are being suppressed. And we soon see that our social media feeds on this perception that we are missing out on something that we want to see. As of late, the addiction tendencies have been noted by several sources. Be aware that as with the addiction, there is a legitimate need for boundaries, parameters, and there needs to be some form of legislative guidance put in place.
At its heart, this message of we don't want to miss out is often connected to fear. Fear of rejection, the fear of not fitting in with those that we admire, not knowing what's going on. We're going to miss what's important from somebody else. The irony is that at the same time, we're seeing our youth working so hard for a unique identity. I'm different. I'm something unique. I have things about me. I believe different. I think different. All of these, this contradiction and paradox brings attention that I think is part of the struggle that social media feeds. This tension, it's easy for us to want to just move with consensus or move with a flow because we don't want to deal with this tension of both missing out or of being rejected for not knowing. And that this plays into it.
Yeah. When many times our children, their involvement in technology just really kind of seems not like the biggest thing that's happening in the family.
We usually have a lot of other issues. As mom, we're facing that child standing in front of us saying no, or there's the passive rebellion, or they're not listening, or there's the mess, or there's the schedule. We're working on yes, mommy. We're working on respect. We're working on courtesies. We're working, on all these different things that we don't see the need sometimes for the screen issues to be taken on. We think this is the least of our concerns. At least they're watching something good, or at least they're connected with their friends in a good way. They've got good friends. I mean, there's a lot of these excuses. And so in the hierarchy of concerns, many times social media gets pushed down to the bottom. And yet we're seeing a bigger and bigger issue and a bigger ripples from this issue. As I mentioned, that I think the biggest fear or the biggest thing driving us is this fear of rejection, fear of missing out. And what it brought to our mind was over again, if you go back to Growing Kids God's Way and watch Rejection, Man's Greatest Fear, and remembering that where are we to be placing our confidence and our significance? Where does it need to be placed? And it's not placed in the acceptance by everybody else for what we're doing. The one article, as it was talking about, social media is different in that it draws us in with our involvement, our response to it, our attitude towards whatever we've read, our feelings towards it. And every time we comment, because we were saying, how is it different? Mike and I are talking, how is it different from the lie that's always been there that you're missing out, like with commercials, on TV and that kind of stuff. But when you watch a commercial, there's nothing that you're responding to that anybody else can respond back to. I mean, you could walk out of the room, you could turn it off, you could mute it, you could agree with it, you can disagree with it, you can explain to the people in the room the lie, but it really doesn't draw you in the same way. Where social media, you push a like, you want to know how many others like it. You make a comment, you wonder what somebody else is going to comment. You're getting drawn in there in a way that impacts us emotionally.
Yeah.
And that's where the rejection comes in, or the fears of rejection.
Yeah. So we would challenge you to ask yourself, where have you placed your significance? This is something we need to keep going back to and evaluating over and over again. When we consider social media, we may have a legitimate need for it, for our business, for our work, but have we defined a boundary with it?
There's a lot who have their work that is carried out through social media, whether it be promoting it, whether it be continually connecting the community. But like Mike is saying, do we know where our boundary is?
Yeah. When it comes to our kids and their desires or awareness of social media, we need to be careful not to pressure ourselves to get our kids the means to social media because we ourselves don't want to miss out.
Our fear of missing out leads to us not wanting our kids to miss out. And we need to not let that drive us, but instead show courage and bravery. Be able to say we don't need it. What we're finding is that as we've talked to a lot of young families, many of the moms especially are coming to me going, why do they need a phone? And then turning around and saying they don't need one. There's nothing they need one for. And yet how many are pressured? I had one mom sitting in here and she doesn't allow the friends of her kids, when they come into the house, they can't bring their phone. And she's had the parents just thanking her for this fact that she's not allowing the phones to come in and be a part of the play. And yet she's like, but why don't they do the same in their home if they're so excited that we're doing it? And that really takes just courage. And it's the courage to say that. I'm hearing more and more, like I say, fight to say they don't need it. I'm seeing a lot more of my young moms who are getting off of it and are stepping away from it totally because they're seeing these impacts and they're seeing these ripples. And yes, it does make challenges to get a hold of one another because it's easy to drop a note and hope everybody sees it. But in the same way that these parents are talking to their young teens, they're preparing them for what are we going to do instead. They make sure they have games in the house. They make sure that there's books to read, that you visit friends in person, that you go for walks, you work on hobbies, you play Nerf games, you know, ultimately anything that shows a value for the friendship and on being in the moment that we are here right now, currently together. And so what are we going to do to enjoy it?
There's also a lie that we like to tend to tell ourselves that we as adults tend to often propagate that as, well, you know, I just need a moment to relax. Just a time to unwind. I need that emotional, mental, physical release. Oh, I'm just sitting anyway. I might as well see what's going on. I might as well flip through. However, that which is consumed only drives a dissatisfaction in our current circumstances. So is it innocent? What's driving that dissatisfaction? I mean, we stream through and see statistics, politics, other health options, new meal ideas, a different way to work on the car, or those cute little cats.
These are just some of the things that have been popping up regularly on ours. The question in our mind is, what level of control do I personally have when it comes to consuming social media? If I consume it, does it drive me? Does it drive my passions? And is this consistent with godly character? I was encouraged last night, challenged as well, to read the testimony of a young man, 17, who had deleted social media. And he said, social media is good, but what motivates me to continue to stay off it is meditation. When I started meditating and started being mindful and living in the moment, I realized that social media is the opposite of being mindful. He goes, initially, I'm giving up social media. I was worried about the social aspect of it. And then I realized that if I'm really friends with them, I have their phone numbers. And so now I call them or I text them. And this is a young man who his business is on social media. So it's interesting to see his twist of this. Well, it's sometimes hard to not always follow the same social media trends as friends. He said the experience has helped him appreciate life more. With social media, he believes that one is never in the present moment, but is someone else's moment in a time of the past or the future. He said he was diagnosed with ADHD when he was 15, and reducing his social media usage helped him manage his condition. According to him, social media is very enticing to people who have ADHD since there's an element of instant distraction. He goes, but since quitting the use of social media, I've been able to concentrate better. And then he says, growing up on the internet, it's ingrained as a part of your identity and personality. So it's really hard to separate it from yourself. But I thought what was interesting about this when he talks about that living in the moment and how much as we talk about with our children, wanting them to define God to the world so the world can find God, wanting them to be a picture, of who God is, wanting them to have that otherness as their motivation. If we're going to live in the moment, we've got to do the things that are going to promote that, that are going to allow us to live that rather than some of these other pieces. These are our concerns.
Yeah. So first, as parents, how do we live in the world and not be of it? We hear the dangers for our kids. We aren't immune. Our example of youth speaks loudly as to what our belief of it is. Our goal needs to be no appearance of evil and a priority of godliness in others. We personally need to be careful not to abuse it by going beyond our own freedoms and awareness of others' time. Because when we share that reel or we share that item, we're asking somebody else to give up their time that they could be doing for something else.
These are things we've been just struggling with, that we've been looking at. We realize, this is a funnel issue for us as parents. We just finished that chapter with our class and looking at it and saying, we're the ones having to say, what can we handle? What's within our funnel? What's outside of our funnel? Where does it start taking from other people?
I think secondly, as leaders, we need to show a level of sensitivity and deference to those who will be asking us, what do we think?
Yeah. Their journey, we can't dictate. And this is one of our concerns coming in as having people come to us and ask, what do you think about? Their own convictions are ultimately going to impact their response and their choice. We need to speak life to them. We need to speak truth. But I think we have to be careful not to color it with our own preferences or our own journey, but be sensitive to theirs.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't know where they're at in their journey, past or present. We can offer to walk beside them and show them mercy, grace, compassion, and those things will make us trustworthy. But we need to be careful. It's maybe a gentler way of saying, have you considered this?
Or in our case, sometimes sharing the struggles that we've had to go through.
Yeah. Personally, we each need to know our why. What belief do you hold and what goals have you defined regarding social media?
Your goals may be contact. That's with us for our kids. A lot of the time it's, or else finding the needs of others, family or community. But when we get off track in our beliefs or goals, it all just goes haywire. It all gets off track. Accumulating information is probably not a legitimate goal. And a lot of times that's what we're doing. After a while, you become dissatisfied and you believe you're missing out, or you're being suppressed, or you're not being allowed to find the information that you do need.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to see more, and check out the growingfamilies.life website to find more resources and to get connected.